When Scarlett, who is my great-granddaughter, turned 1, when most kids are trying to walk, she could not walk. She was screaming every time that she would wake up and get up, try to stand up. And they took her to the doctor and put her right in the hospital and determined that she had leukemia. So she went through 2 years of intense chemo and went into remission. And at that point, we thought everything was going to be okay. During that time, Alex got pregnant again, and that's important because later on, when Violet, who is the one that was born through that pregnancy, became the hero in the story because she became the donor of the stem cells for her. So we were upset that she was born, and we thought it was way too soon for Alex to be pregnant after having Scarlett go through what she did. But again, later on, we found out that Violet was the only one that was 100% donor for her, for the bone marrow. So last August, I got a phone call from my son and got the bad news that the leukemia had returned. And at that point, they weren't sure what they were going to do. So we went through the month of September when the doctors were trying to figure out what the next step was. And they determined that she was going to have a bone marrow transplant. But unfortunately, later, when the other 2 were born, they had taken the umbilical cords and stored them so that they would have stem cells available. So that's the first step that they made, was getting those stem cells out of storage. But after testing them, they found out that the stem cells were no good. So they had to go back and kind of start over again. And they tested everyone in the family and determined that Violet, who is the baby that was born, was the only one that was 100% match for her. So during that time, Scarlett was very aware that this was a very serious situation. One day somebody came to the door and she went to the door and said, "I'm going to die if I don't have a bone marrow transplant." So she was very aware, after having gone through 2 years of chemo before, of how serious this was. So fast forward to October, they did the bone marrow transplant, and miracle number 2, we call miracle number 1, Violet, when she was born, being the hero. Second miracle was in October when they did the transplant. They felt that she would be in the hospital until well after Christmas. But she did so well that they sent her home at Thanksgiving. Everything seemed fine, and 2 days before Christmas, we got another phone call that the cancer had returned again, and at that point, they felt that the bone marrow transplant was a fail. So 2 days after Christmas, she went back into the hospital, and they started intense chemo again. In January, she got a very severe lung infection, and things went downhill very quickly at that point. She stopped eating, she was getting very depressed, and we honestly felt we were going to lose her at that point. So it was a very rough month for everyone, emotionally and in every other way at that point. So fast forward to February, we had a revival here at Pine Valley, and unbeknownst to us, Tim had a conversation with Shane Bishop, who is a pastor that we didn't know where he was from at that point. And in that conversation, Tim said that God kind of laid it on him that he should ask Shane to come and do the healing service because he had not had anyone that would step up to do it. And when he was talking with Shane, it was nothing about the revival, but God kind of told him he should ask him. He knew that Shane was not doing any traveling, did not want to go out of the state. but he agreed to do it. So in February, in that revival service, we heard a long story from Shane, which later on became another piece of the story. Well, that night he told the story about all of the problems that he had getting here, which later on in a video it shows all of the things that happened to him on his way here. At the end of that healing service, Jerry and I had been talking prior whether we should take Scarlett's picture with us and have her prayed for. And we were kind of uncertain as to whether that was a good thing to do, but we decided we would go ahead and take the picture. So at the end of the service, when they asked if you would like to be prayed for to come up, we got in line and some friends of ours were ahead of us. When we got up to the front, it just opened up that we could go to Shane to be prayed for. So we took our picture and we told him who we were, told him about our great-granddaughter, and asked if he would pray for her. And he said he would, and he did. And as we turned to leave, he looked at us and said, "I will never forget Scarlet." And we thought that was kind of an odd thing for him to say, not knowing us. But as I walked away, I felt a peace that I had not felt for months. And I sat down, and the friend next to me looked at me and said, "I see a peace on your face that you have not had." I said, "Yes, I do." And at that point, I felt something was going to change. So the next day, I got a phone call, and all of a sudden, the doctors walked in and said that Violet's cells had taken over 100%. And they couldn't explain why, because a week or so before that, there was nothing. But the cells had gone up, and they felt so good about it that there would not be another second transplant, and they went ahead and sent her home. The following week, I emailed Shane Bishop and told him who I was and explained the situation to him and told him that we wanted to thank him for praying for her, because the following day we had gotten that phone call that said that Violet's cells had taken over. So I knew at that point that God was working. So they sent her home, and fast forward to Easter, we went home from church on Easter Sunday, and that afternoon I got a phone call. And Alex said, "Grammy, you won't believe this, but do you know a man named Shane Bishop?" And I said, "Yes, why?" And she said, "Well, a good friend of mine was at his Easter service this morning, and he started talking about a young girl that had leukemia, and started this conversation telling about an older couple that had been at a revival service that he was at in North Carolina, and that he was so excited that she had gone into remission and the cells had taken over from Violet, and that he had emailed me back and asked if he could share my story." And of course I said yes, not knowing at that point who or why he was doing when asking to do this. So on Easter, when this came, we started asking, well, where was this service that you're talking about on Easter? And here we found out that Shane Bishop's church was 10 minutes from where they used to live, and now was 40 minutes away. And we had no idea when he came to North Carolina to Pine Valley where he was from. So of all of the churches all over the country, Tim Rees asked a man who was 10 minutes from where they lived, or 40 minutes from where they live now, to come and preach, which is part of this miracle that all of this story happened. So during that service, Shane talked about what had happened, and at the end of that service, he said, "I'm going to put a blue stone in our jar for Scarlet." Walked down, put the stone in. Well, this video of that service went pretty much viral in our family, and everyone saw it, and they were like astounded. They couldn't believe that all of this had happened. So it had a major effect on our family at that point. So on March 26th, they basically said that she was in remission at that point. We knew then why Shane had said, "I will never forget Scarlett." Since that point, in June, they were going to take her Broviac out because she was starting to get a problem with her skin, and they told us that they could not do anything until August. But we started a prayer group, and all of a sudden they were able to move that surgery up. So that was another miracle that she got that out, because that would have caused another major infection in her body, which could have caused another problem. So all of those things kind of work together, but for the most part, she can do most everything.